Okay. गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरु साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। अखण्डमण्डलाकारं व्याप्तं येन चराचरं तत्पदं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। नमस्ते शारदा देवी काश्मीरपुरवासिनी विद्यादानं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा। ओम श्री सद्गुरुदेवाय नमः। हरिः ओम तत्सत्। All right, so let us begin our session. Pull up yesterday's JS bin, which we were using for CSS. Okay, so any particular questions you have, Anupamaji, regarding the background part?
That is what, Dhavalji. We are using that CSS. We are using a background for the image um, characteristics in CSS, right? But we can bring the same effect in HTML directly also, right?
Yes.
Then why to get into that CSS? That too even more.
Yeah, what is the difference?
That pixels,
Okay.
everything we are defining, no?
So when it's, it's easier to think of it in this way. When we want to show images just for decorative purposes, it is better to show them using CSS. And when we want to show the images for content purposes, it is better to show them using the HTML part. So for example, in this page, this icon that we are seeing, okay, is better done through a background image, because this is here just for design purposes. Okay. Now again, let's say this download icon that is there here, down icon, that is done better using CSS because it's for background purposes. It's for design purposes. These icons like clock icon and this flag icon, they are also done better using CSS because that's for design purposes. Versus, let's say this image is done better using HTML because it is actually a part of the content. Okay, you want to show this image as a part of the content of HTML page. Even if the CSS goes away, you still want to show that image. If there is no CSS being applied at all on this page, you would still want to show that image. Now, this particular image again is visual and just for decorative purposes. So this is again done using CSS. So did you get that distinction on where we would want CSS and where we would want HTML? If I just remove all the CSS from a page, just a minute, let me get that edX course. This is not the same profile. Yeah, this one. So here these images are a part of content. So this is done better using HTML. So far you understood the kind of distinction I want to convey.
Yeah, I understood this.
Okay. So you want to show photos of some people, photos of our, Gurukul, photos of Guruji, photos of our team members, photos of our kids, then that would be something that you would want to do it using HTML tags, IMG tags. But if there are visual design aspects of the page, like let's say Wizkids Gurukul, so this is loading quite slowly. So see, this image is better done using HTML, okay? Then this image is better done using HTML, because even if the CSS is discarded, we still want this image to be on the page. Otherwise, what happens if the CSS is discarded? That means, the image will also go away from the page. Clear? So as if we are reading this page through a screen reader, we want to differentiate between those on what we want the screen reader to use and read, and what we want to be discarded. Did that make sense?
Yes, yes,
Hmm?
that Facebook, YouTube, that small icons, those should be done in that HTML tagging, because that is part of content, right?
Mm, not necessarily, but that is, that's immaterial. I would say it's a very small, trivial portion. Whether you do it using HTML or CSS, it would largely not matter because we still have the text here.
Oh,
But in these kind of images, you will definitely want to understand very clearly whether you want it using HTML or CSS.
okay.
Here you want them to be a part of the page. If these styles are not there, then you don't want them to go away to start with. So let me just remove the CSS of this page altogether. That's how a person with screen reader will access this page. So let me just remove that altogether. Delete. See, now this CSS is no longer applicable on this page. So, the person starts accessing this page through screen reader, will get to know that it will read out Wizkids Gurukul, then it will read out the navigation. Again, it will encounter this menu. Probably it was done for mobile, but it is not done properly. So it is repeating on the page. Okay. Then there is about us. It will read out. Then home and about. See, it does not make any sense. Okay. Swami Vivekananda, this text and the image. Okay. Then there is an image. And see, the alt is Wizkids. Okay. So this does not make any sense to the user. Okay, there is an image Wizkids, but what is it? Okay. And then there is purpose, that is read out. Then there is an image of Guruji directly. See, okay. Click for video. There is an image, alt is Wizkids, and it says click for video. See what is the problem now? When you don't do semantic HTML,
For those who are using screen reader, they don't know what actually this image is.
yeah.
And directly Guruji's picture is image is there. There is no description. And again, the video is there is no description of what the video is about.
Correct.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
Then there is our mission, and there is an image. Then there is some design image that should have been actually loaded using background images, and they are actually loaded using img tags. So now user is encountering those images in the page. Alt is Wizkids. Okay, so they are like, okay, there is a Wizkids image, but it does not make any sense. Then suddenly, there is no about section or anything like that. About was there on the top. Now suddenly there is image of Vijayji and image of Arjunji. Okay. Now see again the problem. Okay. These are two separate divisions. So it says Jane Cooper. Okay. And then it reads out this content. Again, Jane Cooper, it reads out this content. Now, one more interesting thing I will tell you, okay? First, let me just go to the next one. So there are 6 items. 2 of them are active right now. Rest of them are not active. Okay. Now again, there are these images. So they are done using img tags. See, they are coming in the content section where they don't make any sense.
Oh.
Okay. Then we come to the footer part. There is a headquarters section and there is no content there. Headquarters info at wizkids.guru. Head office info at wizkids.guru. Quick links. Then there is this black image. Okay. So this is the problem with semantic HTML. If we don't understand semantic HTML and we directly either get it done using some tool or some template, we will end up creating content which looks proper, but it is actually not meaningful. Now, who is the largest user base in the world who is using a screen reader? largest user base in the world who is using a screen reader? Who can answer that question?
No idea for me.
Any guess?
Country-wise or population-wise, Dhavalji?
Just do any wild guess.
Uh, I think
Partially
nowadays
reading.
children are also become they lazy. They just want to just use screen reader rather than going through the content.
Content. Okay. Then who? Anybody else? Any other guess?
What is the question, Dhavalji? Sorry, I missed it. Question.
Those in R&D because to use the time maximum, they just use screen reader while driving or while doing some other work.
Okay. So the question is that who is the largest user base who is using screen reader to access the websites? And I'm just expecting wild guesses, so don't be worried about being wrong, you know. Anybody else?
Country-wise means it is largely populated.
No, largest, like what is the, you know, who uses most, the screen reader the most to access this page?
I thought disabled people who cannot, like partially blind or something.
Okay. Any other guess?
Listening.
Non-English
Wow.
population.
Non-English
Then-
population.
But then it will be reading out in English only, no?
But still they don't want to, they don't know to how to read, but still they can understand. Just like me, I don't know Kannada, but I can understand but when somebody speaks like that.
Okay. Okay, so I'll tell you the answers in order, okay? The number one user base which is accessing this page using a screen reader is search engines.
Oh, okay.
When search engines are indexing your content, they are accessing this page non-visually, which is equivalent to screen reader. Okay. That means if your HTML is not semantic, by default, this website is not going to be SEO friendly. Okay. Although it looks good right now with respect to, you know, visual aspect of things, you know, when you search on Google about Wizkids.guru and, you know, who runs Wizkids.guru, okay, what Google will say?
We find it difficult.
Yes, Google will read out from the semantic HTML part. Does that make sense? It will not bother about all this styling. Okay, if I ask ChatGPT or Gemini, what is Wizkids Gurukul? It's not going to bother about all this styling and all this visual aspect of things. Okay, it is going to try and derive the information from the semantic HTML. Okay, and there, if it is not structured properly, it will not know that the main person behind Wizkids Gurukul is Guruji. Because if you look at the page from a non-semantic, I mean, from a, you know, non-style perspective, non-visual perspective, and purely semantic perspective, he is not actually appearing directly below the About Us section. Actually, you know, Vijayji and Shashidarji are appearing there.
Correct.
And this text was not even properly there, directly next to him. Okay. So all these things matter a lot. If it is properly structured semantically, then that information will be indexed properly. Okay. By search engines, and they will be the one which will give other people results. So we, industry spends a lot of time, marketing and advertising about SEO and this and that. But actually, at the end of the day, if your website is semantic to start with, then SEO is taken care of by default. Okay. So second largest user base is actually ChatGPT and Gemini and all. They are the ones that are going to directly access this information. Third largest is actually the disabled people. Okay. So did this clear your doubt, Ashwin, Anupama ji? Okay. When to use background image versus when to use, image tag?
Yes, it's
Okay.
very clear now.
Okay. So now, background image we were discussing. If you want to, show an image for design purposes, it is better done using background images. And it can be, there is a background attribute that can be specified for a class or an ID, which will show a background image. Along with it, you will also have to specify a height and width, because images are typically in, dimensions, and better to use that dimensions to show the image. So this was some 275 pixels, and this was some 80 pixels. So for 375. So this is showing a background image now. Okay. Now, two more concepts we want to discuss, which will be helpful to you with respect to layout. Let me go to the chat. Pixels and percentage and font size. Okay. So now let me just get rid of the background image for now, and discuss the units and dimensions. So one unit of sizing in HTML is pixels, which is the number of dots in the screen. Okay. And now all the screens have different dots actually. So we cannot generalize that, this width will be equal. Let's say my laptop has 1280 pixels of width. It has 1280 pixels horizontally. Then I cannot assume that this will be applicable to your laptop, or it will be applicable to everybody's laptop. Why?
Because it will be different.
It will be different, right? So this is not the right way of sizing in case we want to fill the screen fully according to the screen size. Whenever we want to optimize the content according to the screen size, then this is not the right unit to be used. It is right unit to be used when we want to show images, but it is not the right unit to be used if we want to show a section or a container. Let me rename this to avoid confusion. Okay. So that's not the right unit to be used. So in that case, what I will do is I will say 100%. Now this is a relative unit. The pixel was absolute unit, but this is a relative unit. So this is more like, fill the 100% of the screen width. So you can see that this much is the screen width. That means it is considering this much as 100%. Okay, versus if I say 1280 pixels, then it is showing a scroll bar here. Okay. So imagine this site is being accessed on a mobile phone where the width is actually less. So if I use 100%, it will satisfactorily target the mobile phone. Okay, it will optimize the size of things as per the width of the mobile phone. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes, G.
Now let me just give it an arbitrary height and make it this big. Okay, so this is the number of, this is the entire division, 100% of the width. I'm giving a specific height right now to this. Now let me create another division within this. Div column. Okay. Now here I can say container column. Now why I'm using container dot column and not just directly column?
Column actually is inside that container.
It will still target column if I just use it like this. Okay, let me demo that. Background color blue. Okay, width 50%, height 100 px. So you can see that it has targeted column correctly. Okay, but now the problem might be this. You see, there are column is a very generic name here, right? So I have two kinds of containers going on in my page. One is an about container. One is a testimonials container. And within them, both of them, I have columns. Okay. Now, it is not necessary that I want the same output for both. Okay. I would probably want a different output for testimonials container and a different output for about container. So what I want to typically do is target the columns within about container like this. And now you see that I am targeting both the columns in a very different way. This is my testimonials container. There I want to have 3 columns. So I am giving a width of 33% versus here I want to have 2 columns and I am giving a width of 50%. Does that make sense?
Yes, Dhalji.
If I just use the class column, which is a very generic class, then it is highly likely that, if I have the same thing going on in other places in the document, that will also be targeted. It depends on the document. It is very contextual. So this is not a generalized strategy or a generalized statement. If you end up having a document where column is just being used once, then you might want to do this direct targeting of column. but you'll have to be, forward looking and, use proper judgment whether in future you will have different columns, whether you want, this content will be expanding down the line and your website will have more and more content down the line. In which case I want to, configure it this way. So later it becomes very much scalable and maintainable. Clear?
Yes, Dhaval.
Yes, Ji.
Now let me target one more column here. Let me add one more column here. So we'll see that it is now actually targeting both of the columns in about container. Okay. Now there is another problem in about containers. I added the column class. Okay. Another column within this about container, but you are not seeing that here.
Yes.
Overlapped.
It's not overlapping. It went down. Okay.
It's below the blue one.
Yeah, it went below, and actually, what is happening is, since this is having only height of 100 pixels, it's not getting visible. It's cut off. If I change this height to 200 pixel, you will see that. I'll apply a border here as well to make things more specific. You can see that there are two columns here. Okay. So this problem is there because blocks, like div and main and section and article, typically assume that you want to have that only once in a horizontal line. Okay. So when you use a div block or section block or, main block, it is assumed in HTML that you only want one of them in a line, unless otherwise specified. So either you will want to do this as display grid. Okay. And grid, let me look up the syntax of grid. See, even I don't know all these syntaxes, which should give you a lot of confidence that, it is not about actually syntax and concepts as much as it is about how to think about front end. So, and display grid is a very recent addition to CSS. So display grid, and actually it should work according to the documentation. So if I don't give any height or width, let me see what happens. Okay, so this looks very complex for now, and it will take some time for me as well to learn this. So here I can either tell ChatGPT to arrange this as a grid, or arrange this side by side. But to tell you the syntax which I know, display flex. Okay. So if I say display flex, that's pretty similar to grid, but grid offers more, control over what happens with this content when it is rendered in a different resolution and a different layout. So to give you an illustration of why we use grid kind of mechanism is the template that I gave you for the exercise, but you don't have to worry about the layout portion for now. Now let us say this is a grid of content. It has 3 columns, right? Okay. Now what we want to do is, if let's say this is a mobile phone, then what we want to do, if it's a tablet, we want to show 2 columns at a time. Okay, and the third column has come below. Now, if it is a mobile phone that is accessing this page, then we want 1 column per at a time. See how this content has scaled so nicely in different sizes.
The responsiveness.
Yeah, it is responsive design, and that's done using grid display. Grid, we say that, either show 3 columns at a time for desktop size, then 2 columns at a time for tablet size, and 1 column at a time for the mobile size. So that's done using grid. I don't want to go into too much of detail. One, because even I don't know about grid myself. And, with our Bolt and ChatGPT kind of tools, we don't even have to go into that kind of syntax. We can just say that display it as a grid, showing 3 columns at a time in tablet, desktop, and 2 at a time in tablet, and 1 at a time in mobile phone. It will automatically apply that grid rules here. Okay. Or we can use the word make it responsive. But point being, the relative units are very helpful here. Okay. If I use the relative units, then I can actually target the right sizing. So let me also do display flex here. And back border 1px solid. Hello. All right. So there are 3 columns in testimonials container. All of them are having 33% width. Any questions with what we did?
No, Davaji.
Okay. There is another small concept in layout, which is margin and padding. Okay. So margin is when we want to have spacing between different elements. So let me say margin 10 pixels. That means between each of these, we want to have margin. Okay. Each of the element is having a margin of 10 pixels around it. Is this particular thing clear?
Yes, Ji.
So there is a concept of margin. Okay. There is also a concept of padding. So let me put some content inside first. So there is this content inside it. And if I say padding is 10 pixels, see the inside has spacing now. optimize this for that spacing. So I'll remove the padding again and see that the padding goes away and there is no spacing inside. And margin is like spacing between them. So when I give margin to an element, it creates a space around it. And if I give padding to an element, it creates a space inside it. Okay. Now the last thing with respect to the units is a unit called REM. Okay. Let me give that here as well. Now this is a very spatial unit. Till now we saw that there is a unit called percentage, which is, the percentage of screen size. There is a unit called pixel, which is a specific unit, as far as anything is concerned. So when we are using images, better to use pixels. In layouts, better to use percentages. Okay. But with margin padding and, font sizing, let us say font size as well. Font size 1 REM. Okay. Now, what is this REM? It's a very interesting concept. Let me go to preferences here. Okay. Settings. Appearance. Font size. Okay. Now, this font size is medium, which is probably some 14 pixels. Okay. That means that where were we? Yeah, here. 1 REM is 14 pixels. Whatever is the user's font size, selected font size, irrespective of the browser, irrespective of the setup, whatever is their selected font size, let's say I customize my font, okay? And okay, it does not, 16. So 16 is the font size. So let me increase it, large. Okay, now default font size is large. You can see that this increased. Okay, versus I am giving a font size in the column here, which is font size 12px. Okay, and I'm pasting the same content here. You will see that this font size does not increase, but this increased. In this container, about container, let me make the color white to make it more readable. Can you see this?
Yes, sir.
So pixel is an absolute unit. Okay, irrespective of the default font size of the user, it does not change. Versus REM is a relative unit with respect to the user's font size selection. So for text content, it is better to use REM. Why is that?
So the dynamically it can change based on users.
If a user has difficulty reading small fonts, let's say they are aged, okay, and they want to, by default, read things in a larger font. What they would have done?
They would have increased the font size.
They would have increased the font size. If we specify things with respect to pixel, they will still see small sizes. It's not that they cannot still increase this screen size and read it, but by using REM, we are making their life very easy. Because you see how this is very easy to read and access. Okay. So 3 different units we are learning. Pixels, which is absolute unit, very useful for things like images and, visual design elements like borders and things like that. Borders, I don't want to keep REM borders, okay? That will make them very thick based on user sizes. So there I definitely want to use pixels. Okay, layout, I don't want to use REM. I don't want my columns to change based on user sizes. Clear? Okay. There I definitely want to specify percentages so that I can still properly accommodate the screens. Okay. And margin padding and font sizes, I would want to use REM.
Expansion of REM, Dhavalji.
Yeah, relative EM. R is called relative.
Okay.
EM is a unit of font size where it is emulated. It's probably, abbreviation of emulated.
Oh, okay.
Root EM. It's not relative EM, it's root EM.
Relative to browser's font size.
Browser's font size. So when we, size the text according to the browser font size, then, see what happens so nicely is that layout does not change because the layout is in percentages. Okay. Images also don't change because they are in
pixels.
But the fonts change because they are in REM. And that makes the site very much accessible, even though, it is in large font sizes. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Now, somebody who is visually challenged can still challenge in, in a sense that they need a bigger text, can still easily access this content, even though it is much larger in font size. If we size everything using just one unit, then this will not scale well.
Correct.
Clear?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So this concludes our CSS. Any questions?
Dhavalji, we are giving that padding and margin to specify the spaces around the element and
Inside
within
element.
that element. Is there any other thing that we need to use so that the spacing between the wording, the lines, text?
Spacing between the lines. All these things are there. See, even these things, eventually you will learn much more about this through searching the web and all. But, there is a line spacing, line height, all these things are there as well. For example, I can specify line height, 1 REM. Okay, it will specify it to that much. 2 REM, it increases the line height. All these things are there. But the fundamental still remains the same, that at the end of the day, we want to create the content in a way that is accessible for the user. Okay.
Yeah, got it.
Even though the font sizes have changed here, my images stay the same size, my layout stay the same size. Okay. See, Light of the Self Foundation has not increased a lot in the size because it's an image, and there I have specified pixel size. Fonts have increased because they are REMs. Okay. But then again, the columns are not changing the size because they are done in percentages. Clear?
Yes.
So I would still want to, encourage and keep the same line of thinking that at the end of the day, even CSS, the primary target is to ensure that the content is accessible for the user. If we keep on thinking along the same lines, then everything else is, easier to decide what to do, what syntax to use, which all things to be done, because that is the one that will primarily dictate our decisions. Clear? And accessibility is not just about, font sizes as well. If I am accessing this site on a mobile phone, and if it still displays the content in 3 columns, then also it is not accessible. So there the call needs to be taken that, this needs to be displayed in 1 column at a time so that users can still access the content properly. Clear? See, now the entire thing has changed to a single column layout. See, everything is appearing in just 1 column. Even the questions that were appearing in 2 columns, frequently asked question, now are appearing in 1 column. Okay. So there what is happening? This content which was taking 50% of the spacing, okay, is now going to take 100% of the spacing. Okay. And about container actually don't have any height to begin with. Or let me give a height for now, because it will not. Okay, so this is taking. Oh, wait, I'm using display flex. So this is going to be stacked. When the display changes to mobile, this is called responsive design. It's a play between, changing the number of columns in a grid based on a certain amount of screen size. That portion, most of the time, you will not have to worry about. It's a grid layout technique that can be done using ChatGPT or our Bolt. But the fundamental is that based on the screen size, it will change the number of columns in a particular grid row. Any questions with this? See, if I do small, then the same thing works with small font sizes, but it's still very much accessible. Worse is if I have to do this, okay? If the font sizes are pixels, then what I will have to do, I will have to zoom the page. Now that is a big problem. Okay, if I zoom the page, everything starts breaking. Okay, now it is a big screen. I am still getting a layout like this because I have changed the size of everything to big, including images. See, that is the problem. So if I increase the screen size by zooming, it's not doing the trick. But if I use the right units for right things, it scales very well. Any questions?
No, that's
I'm not still very satisfied with the grid portion. I think I will cover that a little bit in our next session. I want to ingrain that concept very well as well before we move on to now JavaScript and React. So we will cover that once again. But for today, we will close. Let me plug my laptop in. All right. Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Pratyorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Gurupyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Okay, any